Highland farmers in Austria used to sprinkle it on bread and add it to drinks. It stimulated hemoglobin formation, made it easier to breathe at high altitudes, and according to them, prolonged life and protected them from infectious diseases. Women also favoured it to give their skin a peaches and cream complexion, thinking it's some kind of a health booster. But actually, we're talking about a potent poison. Austrian peasants consumed a dose that would initially kill an unprepared person. What was the secret to their survival? There are countless poisons in the world, used for hunting, self-defense, medical purposes, and murders. Sure thing, one must have extensive knowledge in chemistry and biology to apply poisons correctly. Today, we'll look at some of the deadliest, causing terrifying consequences. Stay tuned. We're about to discuss a substance that can literally destroy everything. A drop of this toxin can kill everything there is. Just so you know, each like and subscription support this video and let YouTube algorithms know that it's worth watching. In 2015, 19 inmates of New York's Rikers Island prison complained of finding something like blue and green pellets in their meatloaf. You'd probably be alarmed too if you found such things in your meal, right? The inmates felt unwell and were certain that they'd been poisoned by some chemical. A sample was analysed and they found in it. But more on that later. Another report mentions a woman who deliberately ate 1.5 kilograms, 3.3 pounds of rat bait. It contained a total of 75 milligrams of the same substance. After standard treatment, she fully recovered. Yet another case involved a 17-year-old young man who was hospitalized with a severe blood coagulation disorder. It turned out that he'd been smoking a mixture of marijuana and the aforementioned chemical. Like in other similar cases, he was treated with vitamin K, but symptoms persisted for several months. All these cases have one thing in common: the anticoagulant brodifacoum. This substance was developed in the United Kingdom in 1977 to combat rats. Now this rodenticide is used against mice and even larger pests like opossums. Brodifacoum is unique for two reasons. It's a highly palatable bait for rodents and is lethal to them even when ingested just once. The authorities of the British island of South Georgia utilised these characteristics. The thing was that at one point the island became overrun with a huge number of Norwegian rats. Rattus norvegicus. How did they get there? Firstly, in the 18th century, the first human, Captain James Cook, landed there along with the hordes of Rattus norvegicus. There were no predators on the island, but birds were highly abundant. Consequently, the rats thrived, feeding on chicks and bird eggs, since there were no trees on the island, and birds built their nests in grass and burrows that could be easily reached by rats. Secondly, in the latter half of the 19th and early 20th centuries, Norwegian whalers flocked to South Georgia for whale and sea oil that was used for candles and lamps. And who did they bring with them? You've guessed it, rats and mice. With the advent of electricity, the whalers forgot about South Georgia, but the rodents didn't. The local bird population suffered, decreasing by 90% to Cook's time. Then, in the 21st century, the government of South Georgia resorted to an unexpected plan. They hired several helicopters to drop the brodifacoum rodenticide over every square meter, every 10 feet of the entire area of the island, which is over 4,000 square kilometers, 1,540 square miles. The effort continued for several years, resulting in the complete eradication of rats. However, in 2016, they found paw prints of one rat. The entire area was re-poisoned and no more tracks have been found since. The authorities managed to do the impossible and birds once again began repopulating the island. When it enters the bloodstream, brodifacoum reduces the amount of vitamin K. This vitamin is crucial in blood clotting, so its depletion leads to internal bleeding. In rodents, this results in shock, loss of consciousness, and ultimately death. In humans, symptoms include weakness, headaches, nausea, coughing up blood, pain, and subcutaneous hemorrhages. The primary antidote is the immediate administration of vitamin K. It's highly effective if poisoning is detected before severe bleeding occurs. But another highly toxic substance, which can cause serious health problems, has an even more unique antidote. At first glance, this substance resembles ordinary granulated sugar, but don't be fooled. In reality, it's an extremely potent poison. No, it's not yet the most toxic substance in the world. We promised to discuss, but it still is very dangerous. Theoretical physicist Robert Oppenheimer, a protagonist of the 2023 movie Oppenheimer, tried to use this substance to poison his professor with it. We're sure you've never felt such strong animosity towards any of your teachers to even consider such a thing. Ultimately, the character's plan doesn't come to fruition, and whether this incident actually happened in history is unknown. In fact, this poison was a favourite among killers in the past, as in the early 20th century you could easily buy this powder in a pharmacy. It has an almond smell and taste and acts instantly, but you'll never look at almonds the same way again. So distinguishing this poison in the almond pastries of Grigory Rasputin, a friend of the family of Russian Emperor Nicholas II, was impossible. The infamous Russian mystic was targeted by a group of conspirators who attempted to poison him, but this didn't come to pass. You might be wondering why. Cyanides have been used since the ancient times. For example, the ancient Egyptians derived a deadly essence from peach pits. In 2013, 81 elephants died from potassium cyanide poisoning in Zimbabwe's Hwanga National Park. Poachers had poisoned the animals' drinking water with the toxin. This incident became the most massive instance of elephant poaching in the country's history. In addition to the elephants, several smaller animals and predators that hunted them also died. The poachers did this to obtain the elephant's tusks, which are highly valued in Asian black markets. Some speculate that there was no poison at all. However, another theory suggests that, unknowingly, the conspirators neutralized it with sweetness. The secret is finally out. We're talking about potassium cyanide. Sugars, mainly glucose, are used among its antidotes. By the way, the wine served to Rasputin also contained some glucose. If poisoning does occur, the victim will ultimately experience a burning sensation in the throat, stiffness, loss of sensation in the palate and tongue, among many other unpleasant symptoms. A lethal dose for a human is approximately 1.7 milligrams per kilogram. The body simply succumbs to intracellular oxygen starvation. If one ingests a gram of this substance, death will occur within a minute. Potassium cyanide was first synthesized by Swedish apothecary Carl William Scheele in the 18th century. It also occurs naturally. One can be poisoned by consuming a large amount of seeds from apricots, peaches and cherries and plums. A daily norm doesn't usually exceed 20 grams for an adult. When these seeds reach the stomach, they produce hydrocyanic acid from which cyanides are derived. Therefore, it's best to be cautious with them. This substance is considered to be 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. It's tetrodotoxetine. It's found in high concentrations in fish from the Tetradontiformes order, particularly the notorious pufferfish. The toxin is present in its liver, ovaries and roe. Additionally, many bacteria are capable of producing tetrodotoxin. The toxin was discovered by the Japanese scientist Sahara at the beginning of the 20th century, who also managed to crystallize it. The first recorded case of poisoning by this toxin was documented in 1774 by Captain James Cook. He and two of his companions sampled the liver and roe of a local tropical fish, a species of pufferfish in New Caledonia, while the innards were fed to a pig. Imagine this. By 3 a.m, they experienced intense numbness and weakness, only feeling better after taking medications, including an emetic. The pig, having eaten the remains of the fish with the most of the toxin, died. Other symptoms of tetrodotoxin poisoning include difficulty breathing and convulsions. A mere 1 to 2 milligrams of this substance is enough for a lethal outcome. Of course, the amount of toxin in the fish varies depending on the species. but in some cases a single individual can kill 30 to 40 people. Yes, we're talking about the great and fearsome fugu and the fact that people spend years learning how to cook it. A lot of tetrodotoxin poisoning cases have been featured in well-known movies such as Law Abiding Citizen, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Kill Bill 2, and TV series like The X-Files, Bones and Grimm. What makes things worse is that there is no antidote to this toxin, so it's probably best to steer clear of fugu, just in case. The next substance was the cause of mass poisonings. On July 11, 1976, thousands of residents in the Italian town of Seveso began suffering from nausea and vision problems. Within 3 to 4 days, hospitals were overwhelmed, including with children. They exhibited rashes, abscesses, back pain, weakness, and dull headaches. These symptoms were accompanied by horrific stories about animals and birds dying in their yards. In fact, that fateful day saw an explosion at a chemical plant owned by a Swiss company releasing a cloud of dioxin into the air. Dioxin is one of the most toxic compounds on Earth. In the years following the accident, there was a significant increase in congenital anomalies among newborns in the area around the factory. Dioxins are persistent environmental pollutants. They are formed as a result of industrial processes, but can also occur naturally during forest fires and volcanic eruptions. In terms of their impact on humans, these guys suppress the immune system and intensely affect cell division processes. All this leads to the development of cancer, hormonal disorders, and metabolic disturbances. The result is a compromised immune system. 90% of toxins enter the body through food, primarily through meat and dairy products, fish and shellfish. The remaining 10% is through air and dust entering via the lungs and skin. These substances accumulate in fatty tissues and can even be passed to a fetus and child through the placenta and breast milk. There is no antidote for dioxin. Moreover, the half-life of dioxins in the human body ranges from 7 to 11 years. So once it enters the body, it stays for a long time. And the most terrifying thing is that this poison is invisible. The next poison is found in certain mushrooms that cunningly masquerade as chanterelles and button mushrooms. But in reality, it's the most common mushroom of the Amanita genus, the deadly Amanita phalloides, or death cap. It contains a toxin known as amatoxin. 95% of mushroom-related deaths worldwide are due to mushrooms containing this poison. Besides Amanitas, it's also found in mushrooms of the Galerina and Lepoita genera. All of them are fatally dangerous. The first signs of acute amatoxin poisoning appear within 6 to 30 hours after consuming these deceptive mushrooms. Naturally, the severity of the symptoms depend on the quantity consumed. Although this poison acts slowly, the onset of symptoms may come quite abruptly. They start with intense vomiting and stomach pain. The victim develops weaknesses and experiences disturbances in the water electrolyte balance. By the second or third day, the victim suffers from liver and kidney failure, which can easily lead to death. Interestingly, amatoxin is thermally stable, remaining toxic in both raw and cooked mushrooms. Amatoxin containing mushrooms cause approximately 50 to 100 deaths annually in Europe alone. There's no specific antidote for amatoxin, although research in this area is ongoing and has had some successes. Mainly, treatment involves supportive therapy. It's been used as an aphrodisiac, a beer additive, a remedy for paralysis, and as an energy booster. An example of the latter occurred on a hot August day in 1904. During the Olympic Marathon in Missouri, at the 22-kilometer, 13.7-mile mark, runner Thomas Hicks began to struggle, and his coaches gave him the Red Bull of that era. 1 milligram, 0.015 grain, of strychnine mixed with egg white. Moreover, they forbade him to drink water. For his next dose, they mixed the strychnine with brandy. Had Hicks received a third dose as planned, he likely would have died. He won the race, narrowly escaping death. The strychnine caused facial muscle spasms, hallucinations, and he lost 3.5 kilos, 7.7 pounds, during the race. Other consequences of poisoning by this toxin include convulsions and respiratory failure. In small doses, strychnine does indeed act as a short-term stimulant. However, unlike caffeine, just 5 milligrams, 0.077 grain, is enough to kill an adult. This poison is derived from the seeds of the strychnine tree, Strychnos nux vomica. It was first isolated in 1918 by Pierre Pelletier and Joseph Cavandou and synthesized in 1954. In nature, this tree, which can grow up to 12 meters, 39 feet tall, looks innocuous and resembles a large pear tree. Yet every part of it is poisonous, including any parasitic plants that grow on the strychnine tree. The plant produces the toxin from the amino acid tryptophan. This bitter-tasting molecule may deter predators. Strychnine is so toxic that it was used for years to get rid of rodents and birds. However, in 2006, the EU banned its use for killing moles. Strychnine is cautiously administered to humans as a stimulant. In cases of poisoning, emetics and chemical antidotes, mainly with tannic acid, are prescribed. Therefore, such stimulants should never be used without a doctor's prescription. The next poison, also a plant of origin, has been cleverly disguised. On a September day in 1978, BBC employee Georgie Makoff was near a bus stop in London when he felt a slight jab with an umbrella. Along with it, a tiny sphere less than 2 millimeters, 0.08 inches in diameter, entered his body. It was filled with ricin, an extremely toxic protein poison of plant origin. Markov developed a fever and died several days later. Nope, this wasn't a scene from a spy novel, but a real incident that happened during the Cold War. Indeed, a minuscule amount of this poison the size of a tiny dot can kill a person if inhaled, swallowed, or injected. An antidote is being developed, and symptomatic treatment only reduces the likelihood of a fatal outcome. When ricin is injected, the muscles and lymph nodes around the site immediately die. This is typically followed by nausea, fever, coughing, internal bleeding, liver, spleen, and kidney failure, leading to death due to circulatory system collapse. Treating ricin poisoning can be challenging after the onset of symptoms. Every year, around 1 million tons of castor beans are processed worldwide. Ricin is a byproduct of beans from this tropical plant, which are used in the production of castor oil. What if you swallowed a whole castor bean? Most likely, nothing would happen. The key is not to chew it, so it would just harmlessly pass through your body. Note that its lethal potential exceeds that of cyanide. Despite these qualities, ricin has found medical applications. It is used to study cellular processes and could potentially be used in cancer therapy. In March 1968, 6,250 sheep died at the same time on the pastures of a reservation in Utah. Examination established that the cause of death was organophosphorus compound poisoning. This incident coincided with open-air testing of the VX agent. VX is the most toxic of known chemical warfare agents, a clear, amber-colored, oily liquid that is tasteless and odorless. Just one drop of this substance on your skin can kill a person within minutes. You might think this is the very poison that could destroy everything. Not quite, but we're getting close. So, in 1968, a scandal broke out, drawing attention of international community. The base's leadership denied any involvement in the sheep incident, but compensated the farmers for their losses, including future ones, as no one wanted to buy their lamb. This incident is a stark illustration of how even the smallest amount of VX can cause massive losses. VX was created in 1955, initially developed as a pesticide. Its extreme toxicity prevented its use in agriculture. Consequently, VX began to be used as a chemical weapon. If a person inhales VX, they start coughing, have difficulty breathing, then experience vision problems, tearing, abdominal pain, nausea, and seizures. A large dose is a powerful assault on the entire nervous system, leading to convulsions. If contact with the poison has occurred, it's better to remove clothing as traces of VX can remain on it for another half an hour. This is especially true if the toxin was dispersed as an aerosol or vapor. Atropine, pralidoxime and diazepam are used as antidotes to VX. While VX is already surprisingly toxic, there exists a poison in nature more than 100,000 times more potent: matotoxin. It's produced by a type of plankton called Gambia discus toxicus. It was first isolated from fish that cause ciguatera poisoning. In Tahiti, the fish is called mato, which borrowed its name to the poison. Just imagine someone simply eats a fish, not even a fugu, and within 3 to 6 hours they experience nausea, abdominal pain, tingling, itching, blurred vision. Cold objects feel hot, and hot objects feel cold. This condition can last for several days, or in the worst cases, several months or even years. Of course, you shouldn't fear all tropical and subtropical fish. It all depends whether they eat the dangerous plankton and on the species of the fish itself. Ciguatera most often affects those who consume barracudas, moray eels, sea bass, amberjack, sturgeon, parrotfish, surgeonfish and red snapper. The molecular structure of matotoxin is also intriguing, consisting of 32 rings, making it one of the largest and most complex non-protein, non-polysaccharide molecules. Attempts to synthesize it began almost 30 years ago in 1996. Although the research has continued to this day, so far scientists have only been able to partially synthesize it. So matotoxin is still obtained from living organisms. For example, to obtain it in its pure form, scientists grew the plankton, Gambia discus toxicus, for a year, ending up with 4,000 litres, 1,057 gallons of culture. They then went through the numerous stages to isolate, concentrate and purify the compound, resulting in a mere 5 milligrams, 0.077 grain, of chemically pure matotoxin. All jokes aside, it takes just 1.3 nanograms to kill a mouse. Research on this type of poison continues to this day. Touching this frog even once can cost you your life, especially if you have a cut on your hand. We're talking about the tiny tree frogs of the genus Phyllobates from the jungles of Western Colombia. They secrete poison from glands on their backs and behind their ears. Native Americans have used this toxin for centuries to poison their darts. In the 1960s, scientists discovered that the skin glands of the golden poison frog and the bicolored tree frog, Phyllobates bicolor, contained batrachotoxin, a potent poison more toxic than the tetrodotoxin in pufferfish, which, as you recall, is itself over 1,000 times more deadly than cyanide. A lethal dose for a human is about the amount of 2 large grains of table salt. Figuratively speaking, one frog contains almost 20 such grains. What happens if this toxin enters the bloodstream? A person experiences arrhythmia followed by cardiac arrest. Interestingly, the amount of toxin in a frog caught and kept in laboratory conditions gradually decreases, suggesting that it comes from their diet. Scientists believe that this may be from beetles containing batrachotoxins. But it's not just frogs and beetles that have this poison. In 1989, an American ornithologist studying in Papua New Guinea was once freeing a pichui bird from a net when it bit and scratched him, numbing his hand. Analysis of the feathers showed the presence of batrachotoxin. Unlike the ornithologist, the people of New Guinea knew this bird was inedible. As for the frogs, this poison serves as a great defense mechanism, protecting them from predators. There is no effective antidote for it. Just one drop of this substance on the skin can cause sweating and muscular twitching. If the dose is larger, one might lose consciousness, experience seizures or paralysis, and respiratory failure could become life-threatening. Meet sarin, a clear, tasteless and odorless liquid that doubles as a man-made chemical warfare agent. Sarin is a nerve paralytic agent that can vaporize and disperse into the environment. In its liquid form, sarin boils at 151.5 degrees Celsius, 304.7 Fahrenheit. It is alarmingly easy to get poisoned by sarin, this happens through skin or eye contact, or by inhaling air contaminated with sarin. It's better not to approach someone who's been exposed to sarin vapors for at least half an hour because, just like with VX, their clothing will be emitting this toxic substance for that long. Sarin evaporates very quickly and a person may not even realize they've been poisoned since it's odorless, yet symptoms can manifest within a few seconds. So be aware if someone starts having a runny nose, teary and painful eyes, constricted pupils, increased salivation, sweating, coughing, rapid breathing, intestinal issues, weakness, drowsiness, and a range of similar symptoms. It's likely that they haven't just fallen ill, but have been poisoned, in our case with sarin. The symptoms may manifest individually or all at once. This poison does not occur naturally. It was developed in Germany in 1938, originally as a pesticide. However, it was presumably used during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s and in 2 terrorist attacks in Japan in 1994 and 1995. Fortunately, there are some antidotes for this toxin. But it's time for us to move on. What would you do for a beautiful hat? Remember that amusing character from the story about Alice? He got almost everyone's attention. However, not everyone knows that during the times of Lewis Carroll and earlier, the expression mad as a hatter was common. That was because hat makers of that era used mercury nitrate in the production of felt hats. This led to chronic poisoning among the craftsmen, resulting in hallucinations, seizures, and dementia. Nowadays, people are primarily exposed to methyl mercury when consuming fish and shellfish that contain it. How does it end up there? In reality, the entire population of the Earth is exposed to mercury in some degree. It's present in the Earth's crust and is released through volcanic activity, weathering of rocks, or human activity. Once in the environment, mercury can be transformed by bacteria into methyl mercury. This in turn accumulates in fish and shellfish that feed on plankton contaminated with this toxin. As a result, large predatory fish which eat many smaller fish are likely to have the highest mercury concentration, and cooking these seafood products doesn't destroy it. Up until the 1960s, mercury was actively applied in medicine. For centuries, it was believed that mercury-containing products could cure a wide variety of diseases that were, incidentally, unrelated to each other: melancholy, intestinal problems, influenza, and parasites. In ancient times, when someone suffered from intestinal torsion, a glass of mercury was administered to the patient so that its weight would unfold the twisted parts of the intestine. Mercury-containing drugs were used to treat tuberculosis, scabies, and even cancer. Patients underwent mercury inhalation treatments. For a certain contagious disease, mercury-based medications were used, or the patient was placed in a heated container where mercury vapor was introduced. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, parents used to rub a powder containing calomel or mercury chloride into their children's gums to ease teething pain. However, due to its high toxicity, this substance is now rarely used in medications. Mercury compounds are sometimes used in small doses as a preservative in vaccines. It is also found in thermometers, with each containing up to 2 grams, 0.07 ounces of mercury. Unithiol, taurine, and other medications are used as antidotes in mercury poisoning cases. The next poison is equally ancient and well known. If you strike a hammer against a mineral containing this element, it will emit the smell of garlic. The same thing happens when this substance is heated, as it oxidizes. The steel-colored semi-metal with a greenish tint has been used since ancient times to assassinate rulers. It's believed to have been used to poison Alexander the Great, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Nero's stepbrother. In 17th century France, it was so commonly used to poison wealthy relatives that it became known as poudre de succession, inheritance powder. We're talking about arsenic. Its compounds are still used today, for example, in insecticides, but also for regular purposes in wood treatment, linoleum products, glass making, and depilation. It is added to certain alloys to improve their properties. and is also used to enrich the diet of chickens, domestic rodents, and goats. Arsenic also comes from natural sources. For example, it's released into the atmosphere from volcanoes and is present in groundwater in many countries. It's also produced as a result of human activities such as mining, copper smelting, and emissions from coal power plants. There is no evidence, but it is believed that German Dominican monk Saint Albert the Great first isolated arsenic in 1250. Several centuries later, residents of an alpine region began consuming arsenic as a tonic. They sprinkled it on bread and added it to hot drinks. People believed it gave strength and improved complexion. Interestingly, arsenic does help oxygenate the body, and gradually increasing the dosage can build resistance to the poison. Eventually, men could consume 300 to 400 milligrams, 4.6 to 6.2 grains, at a time with no harm. Long-term exposure to arsenic in humans can lead to cancer and skin diseases. Symptoms of acute poisoning include vomiting, abdominal pain, intestinal problems, numbness, tingling in the limbs, muscle cramps, and, in extreme cases, death. As in the case of mercury, the antidote for arsenic poisoning is unethiol. Remember the substance that can kill everything there is. Patience, just a bit more patience. We're getting very close to it. But first, let's look at another one. The most potent organic poison, botulinum toxin. This protein is produced by Clostridium botulinum bacteria in anaerobic conditions. Typically, this occurs in canned foods and sausages, so it's crucial to observe safety measures when cooking these foods. Otherwise, severe toxic poisoning, known as botulism, can occur. The toxin blocks nerve functions and can lead to respiratory and muscular paralysis. It's dangerous because it has no color, taste, or smell. Only in rare cases does the spoiled product start to smell like rancid butter. Botulism affects not only humans but also birds and horses. It less frequently impacts cattle and fur-bearing animals. The good news is that this disease is relatively rare. Plus, it's not transmitted from person to person. Moreover, botulinum toxin is destroyed by boiling for 25 to 30 minutes. How do you know if someone's been poisoned by this toxin? Within 12 to 36 hours after consuming a product contaminated with botulinum toxin, symptoms like fatigue, weakness, and dizziness begin. This may be followed by blurred vision, dried mouth, and difficulty swallowing, vomiting, abdominal bloating, and intestinal issues. Gradually, you'll feel weakness in the neck and arms. The respiratory muscles and muscles of the lower body will also be affected. All these warning signs indicate a person needs to be treated immediately. The mortality rate for botulism is 5 to 10%. However, prevention of foodborne botulism, that is, proper sterilization of food, is easier than treatment. Where is such a dangerous compound used? During World War II in the USA, botulinum toxin was studied as a potential biological weapon. Today, it's actively used in cosmetics against wrinkles. Do you recognize it as the familiar Botox? No? Then take a closer look. Botox is based on the botulinum toxin, which has a relaxing effect on facial muscles. As a result, the skin above them becomes smoother, reducing the number of wrinkles. This product has been used worldwide for decades to maintain and preserve beauty. Who would then recognize it as a deadly poison? But with the next one, there can be no mistake. At last, the substance that can kill everything there is. Meet a substance 400 times more radioactive than uranium. During its decay, it generates a considerable amount of heat. Just 1 gram, 0.03 ounces, can heat up to 500 degrees Celsius, 932 Fahrenheit. Annually, only about 100 grams, 3.5 ounces of this toxin are produced worldwide, making it one of the rarest substances on Earth. This is polonium-210, a soft radioactive metal of silver-white color. It melts at a temperature of 254 degrees Celsius, 489.2 Fahrenheit. It was discovered in 1898 by Polish-French physicist Marie Curie and named in honor of her homeland, Poland. She extracted it from uranium. Polonium-210 is rarely used by people, and it's extremely risky to handle it. Just 7 trillionths of 1 gram of polonium-210 is enough to kill a person. So what would 1 gram, 0.035 ounces, of this substance do? It has the potential to destroy an entire country. Since there is very little polonium in uranium ore, it's produced in a nuclear reactor from radioactive bismuth-210. Interestingly, lichens can absorb this element directly from the atmosphere. Therefore, in some northern areas, people who eat deer, which in turn eat lichens, have higher concentrations of polonium in their blood. By the way, polonium has been involved in several high-profile deaths. According to one theory, it was used to poison 75-year-old Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat in 2004. In 2006, former Russian secret agent Alexander Litvinenko died from it, receiving a lethal dose in a bar of a London hotel. Polonium might have also caused the deaths of several scientists. It was used in part because it's difficult to detect. Polonium also played a crucial role in the first Soviet atomic bomb. New technology for using this element had to be developed to create the bomb's detonator. This required designing a complex system to protect materials in contact with polonium from its alpha radiation. You need to be extremely cautious when handling polonium, as there is no antidote given its simultaneous toxicity and radioactivity, and it definitely comes at the top of our today's ranking. The world is full of poisons. Humanity has learned to cope with some, but there are still those against which we remain powerless. Who knows if the planet will keep this secret until the end?